Welcome into Jungle Tales, a Pirate Baseball podcast. We appreciate everyone tuning in whenever and however you're watching or listening, whether it's live on Facebook or YouTube or actually via X. Also now, tonight we are talking college baseball across the country. Obviously, we'll focus on the Pirates to begin the show, but then from there we'll branch out, talk about the American as well as several other conferences, teams, players, what have you, as well as just the current landscape. But without any further ado, let me welcome in my co-host, John. How are you?
I'm doing well this evening. It's great to be on here and get to talk with the great Mike Rooney, of course, and also you and JR as well.
And JR, how are things down? I think you're in Greenville.
I'm in Greenville. I'm waiting for Northern Virginia to thaw out. I
Yeah.
can't get anybody to plow my driveway until like Thursday, so I'll be down here for a couple more days. But hey, what a treat to have Mike Rooney on tonight. Can't wait to get started.
Yeah, as you just referenced, that gentleman on the top right of the screen, he's joined us the last several seasons. Always look forward to this conversation. We know college baseball season is near when Mike is joining us, and we're 2.5 weeks away. Runes, how are you?
I'm doing good. Bubba, are you in your car? Are you that level of grinder that you're cranking this out in
I
your
am.
car? Come on now. That's amazing. I love
I have
that.
I have two middle school kids, and they're both playing PlayStation 5. So with that PS5 going on,
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I like to get a quiet environment so we don't have any unexpected interruptions.
I love that. And that is like what you're doing, Bubba, this is what the college baseball preseason is. We're all like in the no sleep zone, juggling 17 different things, just trying to get ourselves to February 13th.
Yeah, no doubts. And crazy time of year for the coaches. They do have the luxury, and we'll start here. This is one of several changes that are being implemented this year. And I know you recently were at the ABCA convention, and we'll touch on some of those topics. But let's start off with the change in the practice schedule. You're able to begin practice this year, January 12th?
Yeah, I think it was, and there's a difference between like unofficial practice and official practice. And it's just, so yeah, like instead of it being 3 weeks to get ready for the season and the first game, now it's 4 weeks. And, I think if I put my coach's hat on for a second, the coaches, you're just lighting candles, saying prayers, hoping that guys are doing their throwing program over Christmas break, right? And there's no way of knowing that or controlling that. And so the extra week gives them a little bit more visibility into what's happening. I'll tell you what I think is a really big topic right now is, especially given the winter storms, can we move the season back to March 1st? Just 2 more weeks. We do have those 2 dead weeks at the end of the year. I think there's a little bit of controversy there. It would move the World Series back into July a little bit, but I don't know. It'd be very interesting. I think, we're getting into season conversations now, but that was a big off-season conversation I kept catching myself in is, hey, what if we started instead of the 3rd Friday in February or 3rd-ish, couldn't we just do the first Friday in March, right? Or the very, move it back 2 more weeks. And so we'll see. I mean, that's a conversation for another day, but man, like the weather we're having right now sure is an advertisement for moving it back 2 more weeks.
Yeah, and I guess the main reason behind all this is to make sure pitchers' arms are safer. On
100%.
Yeah, yeah, and I was a former pitcher myself, and I remember what it was like in those early days, starting in February, and the ramp up period. And yeah, you're exactly right as far as making sure pitching programs were being done and that type of stuff. And back then, coaches didn't really know. I think they have a lot more enlightenment on what's going on with players in today's world.
Yeah, didn't Eric Backage, when he was at Michigan, didn't he propose like a whole month moving it back? If I'm remembering correctly, I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, his was more 4 weeks, if not more, and like get the games all the way into the summer. And I think most people, even the Big Ten coaches that I've talked to who are big proponents of this, like they'd love a month, but I think they would be totally cool with 2 weeks. And I think it is a very logical argument. Like, hey, it's 2 weeks of better weather. It's better for the pitchers. It's better for the fans. Like the truth is, fans don't really want to watch college baseball in the cold in February unless you're coming to like Arizona or you're going to be in one of those dome stadiums. And and I think the other thing as far as growing the game goes is the 2 weeks gets us a little further away from basketball, right? Like just gets you a little further away from March Madness. So I don't know. It's interesting. Like the one thing that's hard about it is the game is growing so much right now that it's hard to. I know even for me that has some postseason ideas that I like, it's hard to get super geeked up about them because things are going really well. But again, like if we started college baseball from scratch right now, there's no sane person would say, hey, opening day February 13th, right? You'd kick that person out of the room. Even someone said March 1st, you'd kind of be like, March 1st, really? But February 13th, we would laugh that person out of the joint.
Bubba, you're muted, Bubba.
And I was thinking about that. We're, one of our East Carolina's biggest foes is UNC Chapel Hill, right? We're playing them so early in the season. We got some big arms going to come into the house on those games, and it just seems so early to play the Tar Heels to me, anyway.
And those games matter, by the way. Like you guys know, like when you think about RPI and hosting and all that stuff, like we will be talking about those February games in May. And so that's the other part that's hard about it is it's not just that we're playing baseball in suboptimal conditions. It's that we're playing really critical games in that weather. So, first world problems, I get it. But, for us college baseball nerds, yeah, like this is what we talk about.
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into it.
Go ahead, Bubba.
We'll definitely dive into the Pirates more here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. And to your point, Runes, in addition to that series against North Carolina, the traveling series, it's been played for several years now. You also have a 3-game series, a return trip down at Conway. And I think this is something that's going to take place pretty much on a yearly basis, alternating between Greenville and Conway in a weekend series between the Pirates and Shants, which I love. But those first 4 weekends, a lot of quality games being played.
Yeah, and it's just like important RPI games, especially if you're the Pirates, right? Like you're playing really highly touted teams that have a lot of cachet. So those results matter. And I think about I did the Big 12 preview for D1Baseball recently, and I think about Texas Tech. Texas Tech's schedule. We were teasing Tim Tadlock that Texas Tech's non-conference schedule last year looks like he lost his fantasy football league and his worst enemy got to make their schedule. Like it was brutal. I think they opened the season at Chapel Hill and then they played Irvine. I mean, it was crazy. And they just never recovered. They went 13-17 in the Big 12, which is not terrible, but they ended up 20-33 overall because they just never got going. So yeah, our sport is unique in that regard where those non-conference games in the beginning of the year, they're going to be on your resume the whole way through.
Hey, I wasn't planning on asking this question so early, but I think it's relevant to get it over with right now. Our first opponent is Xavier. And RPI, I don't even know how much of a factor it is. I know that it's a sizable factor. So last year, they played 7. Well, they played that opening, the Sanderson Ford College Baseball Classic out in, they played that. So they had 4 neutral games. And then they played 17 straight games on the road. And at the end of those 21 games, they were 8-13. But am I crazy? Or weren't they like number 2 RPI? I think they were at one point, maybe like week 4 or 5. And it just didn't make sense. But, I think it's because they played Tennessee, they played LSU, they played Vandy 3 times. They didn't win any of those games. They lost twice to Oregon. But, I guess just having, first of all, road games and having, top 12 teams scheduled played in their favor. And they're doing it again this year. I don't know if you've seen their schedule this year, but they're doing the same thing. 17 of their first 18 games are on the road, and they're playing Arkansas, Louisville, Oregon State, Oregon. It's crazy. So I was just curious. Are we at a disadvantage, East Carolina, that is, playing 37 home games? Like, is it tougher to increase your RPI with a loaded home schedule?
100%. Like, the RPI rewards the road teams. And, think about Indiana State a few years ago when they had that 2-year run. they had mastered playing the road games, and their RPI was really strong because of it. Now they were very good too, but yeah, and Xavier's interesting. Like I'd say they're the extreme. Their coach Billy O'Connor is awesome, and I love his I love his mentality. His mentality is he thinks we've got a good team, and he said, I know the schedule's ridiculous for a Northern team like they are, but he said, I want our guys to control their fate. Like if we don't win enough games, we didn't win enough games. But I don't want to play a mediocre schedule and then hope some committee thinks we played well enough. And so, like on one side, you got to respect that mentality. On the other side, it hasn't worked yet. Like they haven't gotten an at-large bid. And ultimately last year, their problem was they just didn't do well enough in the Big East. I would say their problem was more related to being the third team in that league. But I mean, again, Xavier's good and Billy O'Connor does a great job there, and they're going to pop a regional one of these years. But it's they do have to survive their schedule, and yeah, like you like you guys. Now your guys' RPI is never really that problematic to me because you play a very good schedule. I mean, think about the midweek games that you guys play. Think about the non-conference games you play, home or away. When you play a schedule like that, it's going to take care of itself. But certainly, if you're the Xaviers of the world, playing those quality opponents on the road is always going to be beneficial to your RPI.
Yeah, I was going to talk about one schedule real quick, and that's Florida Atlantic. And they don't leave the state of Florida from February 13th until March 23rd. And all their games are home games, etc. And speaking of them, FAU did hire away the hitting coach from Xavier, Joey Bellini. And yeah, that's just an interesting schedule to me that they get to play that many games at home before leaving the state of Florida.
Yep.
And
And part of that's budget too. Like I do like that the baseball RPI is the primary metric, but I like that we've added some metrics to the committee like KPI, and then DSR is in play this year, that Diamond Sports Rankings. And I because for Florida Atlantic, in their defense, like John McCormick's not scheduling only home games because he's scared to go on the road. He's doing that because his school, it won't give him any more budget than like if you're going to play more road games, that's costly. And FAU is just not in a position to do that for baseball, or they're not making that choice. So, yeah, I don't think FAU is really I wouldn't consider that an ECU's RPI problem necessarily. I think if ECU just does their thing like they normally do, we're going to get into it, I'm sure. But last year, I view ECU's situation as not about schedule or any of those types of things. It's about, hey, every program in this day and age in college baseball, you have to reset your roster at some point. UCLA did it a couple years ago, and they went 19-33. And then we saw what happened last year. TCU, they end up in Omaha. TCU played a bunch of freshmen last year, and it was a little bit touch and go at times. But, and I feel like ECU did that too. Cliff Godwin decided that hey, we got to inject some freshmen, some underclassmen in here at some point and regrow the foundation of the program. And, when you do that, it's just going to be hard because you're going to be playing against much older teams.
Yeah, we'll circle back to the ABCA convention on the tail end of the conversation. But since we're on the Pirates, let's go ahead and talk a little more about ECU and then the American as a whole. Like you mentioned a season ago, it was kind of an imperfect storm, if you will. You had some injuries on the mound, guys that the Pirates were going to be counting on for significant innings from the likes of a Brett Antolik or Ryan Towers. This year, they've already been cleared and they're throwing off the mound and have pitched in intra-squads. So that's great news. And you had a lot of guys such as Austin Irby, Colby Wallace, that he had either played sparingly in the previous season or they were freshmen. So those guys gained very, very valuable experience, and the Pirates appear to have a lot of depth. You know how that can go as a former coach yourself at the Division I level, Runes. But at least on paper here in the preseason, ECU has a lot of depth and a lot of versatility.
Yeah, and I would say like what was unusual last year for us with ECU is, at least for me being on the West Coast, ECU was off my radar during the year until the end of the year. And then, the run in the American tournament was awesome. And then just, even though Coastal won that regional, the way ECU played in Conway in the regional was just awesome. Like, it was so old school ECU, just gritty and tough and edgy. And, like, for me, that was my first real look at Austin Irby. He was awesome in that deal. And, Braden Burris is a name that's getting a lot of attention. And, of course, Ethan Norby, he was the most famous Pirate all year for me. So, I mean, I don't know, like, my attitude has really changed toward this. Like, I remember UCLA, again, playing all those freshmen in 2024, going 19-33, and you're thinking, man, like, is this the end of that program? Like, are they done? Next thing we're going to be reading that John Savage retired, and and it ended like that, and you're like, man, that's just stinks. And then next thing you know, and then you guys know how it goes. All the whispers, like, oh, I wonder where Rock Chalowski's going to transfer to, what SEC school, and all that stuff. And then next thing you know, Rock Chalowski says, no, I'm not. Not only am I not going anywhere, I'm going to help lead these guys. And then they lose their field, and next thing you know, they're in Omaha, and now they're the preseason number 1. So I see a little bit of that for TCU. Oklahoma State's doing that a little bit right now, where they've got a lot of underclassmen they're really counting on. So I don't know. It's interesting. Like, we're at a real interesting time in college sports where the way you construct your roster, there's not one way to do it. You have to make some choices, and people are trying different things, and it's kind of fun to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and if you have the odds-on favorite of the first draft pick in the next, major league draft coming back and saying, I'm coming back, it also helps support some of these other guys who may be thinking about leaving and say, hey, we can build something here. And we've seen what, like you said, UCLA odds-on favorite to be in Omaha, number 1 team in the country, but a special team. And just getting back to my main point, you got to have some guys, and East Carolina did have some that probably could have left and stayed, and I think that helps build the foundation of that team that year.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I wanted to mention this. Last year at the beginning of the season, we had 3 players returning that had started the game the prior year for a total of 77 starts. This season, we have 13 players returning that have started a game for 422 starts. So, I mean, it's just a huge difference this year as far as depth and experience.
Agreed.
So, and you mentioned Norby. Everybody probably knows him by now, but some of these rule changes, with the having to declare the windup, that part, with a pitcher like him who kind of stands in a weird, hybrid, does that have any effect on his the way he's going to take things when he's on the mound this year?
Well, I think the way it's been described to me is the rule is, like you guys are saying, the way I've visualized it is we have these pitchers that stand on the mound like they're in a set position. Like a right-handed pitcher in this position, his chest is facing the third base dugout. And so your eyes tell you, okay, that guy's getting ready to pitch from the stretch. And then they just do a windup and pitch. And so, the rule is with nobody on base, you can do whatever you want. When there's runners on base, every hitter, you have to declare, if that's how you stand, that, hey, if you're from the windup, we assume you're in the stretch because that's what it looks like. But if you are, in fact, pitching from the windup, you have to tell us. So where that would really come into play is runner at third, bases loaded, second and third, those types of things. So, but what I've heard coaches say is that it is wonky, and the umpires weren't very courageous in calling it, right? Like, the umpires were just kind of like, I don't want to get involved. Like, it's kind of weird. And it does sound like it might end up being a little bit more of an emphasis because, again, like the as I understand it, the pitcher's got to remember to announce that every time there's a new hitter with runners in base. Hey, are you from the windup? Are you from the stretch? So we'll see. Like, at the end of the day, it puts the umpires in a tough position, and we'll see how they decide to police it. But we do have a new national coordinator for umpires, Jeff Gosney, this year. So, it's hard to say whether that will be a point of emphasis for him or if that's something that probably we won't notice when we're watching games.
Moving on from the Pirates, within the American last year, of course, East Carolina did not win the regular season title. They advanced to the NCAA tournament by winning the conference tournament down in Clearwater. Coach Hallmark and UTSA just had a stellar season. And then you also have Charlotte and Tulane that are expected to be in contention. What are your thoughts about those clubs, starting with the Roadrunners?
Yeah, I think the American will be. I think this will be going to be a really good year in the league. Yeah, UTSA. It's not only that they basically ran away with like UTSA did the East Carolina and the American last year, right? Like for years, East Carolina. My good friend, our good friend Joe Healy had said that East Carolina was basically lapping the American, right? And that's I don't say that disrespectfully, but there was just crazy dominance. And East Carolina, or I mean, UTSA did that last year, won the league by 5 games, never really felt close, won 47 games. But I think that was not a dig at the American. The UTSA went to the Austin Regional, and like you couldn't watch that and not say, hey, they should have been the 1 seed, not Texas, right? I mean, they just look like the better team. They played like the better team. And it's wild to say because Texas won the SEC regular season. They went 22-8. So, UTSA they've lost some players, but they'll still be very good, you would think. Charlotte, you guys mentioned, that they're on a nice run. I think they're going to have an excellent team. South Florida under Mitch Hannes is, like they're very viable. I think Florida Atlantic is a good club. Wichita State, I think, will be improved. I think Rice will be improved. You guys mentioned Tulane. So I think this will overall – I think this will be a much better year for the American. Now, whether that means more than one bid is hard to say, but it kind of depends on who wins the tournament, quite honestly. But I think, let me say it this way, I think for sure the American will have more than one at-large resume at the end of the year. Whether that comes to fruition or not, we'll see.
Yeah, and talking about UTSA real quick, their season ended playing the excellent UCLA team in the Super Regional, and UCLA was playing some of the best baseball of any team in college last year at that point. So, yeah, UTSA had a heck of a year. Personally, I think they're going to be a little bit going to be backwards a little bit trying to figure out that pitching staff based on what I've read. But going back to Florida Atlantic, John McCormick's been there a long time. And I've noticed he's brought in a lot of new coaches, et cetera. Do you think there's a handing off of the guard with him now, or is he's going to stick it around at Florida Atlantic? Just kind of a feeler question there, and what you think about Coach McCormick.
Yeah, I love Coach Mack, like one of my favorite people in college baseball, like super involved in the ABCA and just a great person. Have known him for a long time. Like Coach McCormick just got inducted into the ABCA Hall of Fame this year. So, like you don't get inducted into the Hall of Fame on the front end of your career, right? Like that's I'm not trying to push Coach McCormick out clearly, but like that's what happens when you're at the end of your career. Now, one of the things about John McCormick is because he's so well regarded, he attracts a lot of really good young coaches. And so, and because he's well regarded as well, he loses a lot of coaches. Like, hey, Jason Jackson at Alabama was one of his famous assistants, and he's had guys go on to be head coaches. So the turnover in that program is more complimentary than it is a negative. I just think like he's a coach that guys want to coach for, and he's also, big programs look at John's coaches as, hey, they're going to be well schooled. They're going to know what winning baseball looks like. For FAU this year, it's a bummer. It's the world we live in, but they lost Trey Beard, their ace, to Florida State. That will hurt. But, like Florida FAU to me doesn't really have down years. They might have medium years, but they're always solid. And when they're really good, they're good. It's hard to say with this year's roster losing Trey Beard, but either way, like they're not a lay down to play in any way.
Yeah. The team that worries me the most, honestly, is Tulane, just because they have we beat them in the championship game, but normally they have our number. They return a lot of offensive weapons and some pitching as well. So I'm afraid of Tulane the most. UTSA, of course, because they were so dominant last year. But yeah, I think Tulane could be really good. And you mentioned earlier that Rice and Wichita State seem to be getting better. I sure hope so. I've said it 100 times. This league will be so much better when Rice and Wichita State are relevant again.
Yeah, I just think David Pierce did a really good, this is a guy that's had a great career, he was one of Wayne Graham's assistant coaches at Rice, won a national title. He really did an excellent job. If people look closely at the job David Pierce did at Texas, it's really that they had some real high highs. I mean, 3 Omahas in a 4-year period, had a Golden Spikes Award winner in Ivan Melendez. And then Brian Green at Wichita State is a very accomplished coach, did great work at New Mexico State and then Washington State. And even though Wichita State is a blue blood in our sport, in this day and age, they kind of resemble more Washington State and New Mexico State, where they have to be scrappy and they have to, work on the edges and those types of things. So I'm with you guys, though. Like, those are 2 programs that when they're humming, are tremendous programs. And so I am very confident. Like, those are 2 teams that for me, I would, I think expectations are probably on the lower side for them, and I would take the over.
Yeah, going back to Charlotte, and you were speaking about an older type team. They look like they're going to change their mindset a little bit, especially in these portal times, and kind of take a little page out of the book of what Indiana football coach did there, Signetti, with an older team, transfers, et cetera. That type of stuff is going on in Charlotte. I think Charlotte is going to be the toughest opponent in the conference for East Carolina.
Yeah, it's funny. I have Charlotte's projected lineup in front of me, and 6 of the 9 kids were everyday players last year, whether that was at another school or at Charlotte. So those are older, experienced players, and then and very talented, some famous guys on the roster. And then they're pitching. They got Central Connecticut State's ace. They got a kid back that made 15 starts, Cribbs. They've got another kid, Taylor, back who made 57 innings. Then they've got they're most of their bullpen looks like it's back, and Ryan Combs from Tennessee. I'm with you. Like, Charlotte is a very like, they're cutting edge in the way they teach, and they do a great job in recruiting. It's kind of a national recruiting profile because of that coaching staff's connection. So yeah, I think they'll be good. I'm with you.
Yeah, guys, in the comment section, Mike Mullis, a.k.a. Mully, chiming in. He's the ESPN Plus color analyst for ECU Baseball. In the last couple seasons, does an excellent job. But Mully, one of the points that I've heard him make in recent days on Pirate Radio, he was talking about the average age of Charlotte and then being an older club. It was somewhere between 22 and a half and 23. So
that'll work. I mean, hey, I'll tell you guys, if you look at Murray State last year, one of their secret sauces, that was in a very old team. Like, they had 29 transfers, and it was some older JUCO players, it was some 4-2-4 guys, it was some Division II guys, but they had all played a ton of college baseball. And that doesn't mean you're going to Omaha when you're old like that, but it sure gives you an advantage.
So a few minutes ago, I mentioned the Tar Heels and then also the Chanticleers. 6 games for the Pirates against those 2 opponents in the first month of the season. So if you would elaborate, let's go to the Chanticleers first. You have Carbone back, obviously Fluky on their Friday night starter spot, and then also Lynch. So their pitching staff obviously is in great shape with those 3 guys kind of being the headliners.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. Chris Burke and I have a podcast, and we were talking about Indiana football, and we were saying, like, who's the Curt Signetti of college baseball? And, it's funny. Kevin Schnall's got a little bit of that in him. Like, now, Schnally was a longtime assistant, where Signetti was a head coach a lot of times, a lot of places. But, like, Kevin Schnall doesn't care about hurting your feelings. Like, he's, you guys saw the interview, the press conference in the regional, right? Like, Kevin Schnall is a ferocious competitor, and if you want to be friends with him after the game, that's a you problem, not a him problem. And I, it's very matter of fact and convicted, like a Curt Signetti. And like, they're really hard to play. They can pitch at a high level. I mean, Fluky could be the first college pitcher off the board, and then their offense is a nightmare. It's run and bunt, and they're climbing all over home plate. And that position player group will be a year older this year. And so they suffocate you defensively. They're really hard to score on. The bullpen, our good friend Aaron Fitt thinks it's the best bullpen in the country, and it's hard to argue with them. So I think that will be a great test. Now, the one thing is with Coastal, not that they were not famous last year or 2 years ago, but last year, I suppose. But this year, it's different, right? Like, people will be even more geeked up to play Coastal. So that's a different thing. But Yeah, like they're awesome. I mean, Coastal's just awesome. I don't think they're going anywhere. The school, that's the school's #1 sport. Yeah, they're good for college baseball, man. I love it.
Yeah, and to your point, as far as being quote the school's #1 sport, the 34 scholarship rule, they are funding 34 scholarships, which is very impressive.
Yeah, like it's that. What's one cool thing about the House settlement with the 34 scholarships for baseball is that not every school chose to do it, but it gave an opportunity for schools to say, "Hey, this is really important to us." Schools like, like you said, Coastal, schools like Dallas Baptist. Hey, a school like Arizona State, who's got an athletic director in Graham Rossini, who's got a long baseball track record, worked for the Diamondbacks for 15 years. And yeah, I just love that it gave schools a chance to say, you know what? Count me in. We're doing this. And we'll see how it plays out, like as far as parity goes and those types of things. But I that's been really cool.
I think one of the biggest things when I think of Coastal is how do you replace a Caden Bodine, right, behind the plate, running things, running the show, that type of player, and can Coastal do that a replacement seamlessly to kind of keep that level of catching going down there in Conway?
I agree, because it's a great point, because Coastal, we know Coastal's going to be good, right? But there's a difference between being good and then going to the Auburn Super Regional and beating an SEC program in their own yard, right? And if you watch that series, guys, Caden Bodine was the difference in that series. Now, certainly, Coastal's pitching was very good, but Caden Bodine hit 2 home runs in that first Super Regional. And when your best player in a tense situation like that just goes off, your whole roster gets to take a breath. And next thing you know, it's like, hey, we're in a Super Regional with an SEC team, and we've got the best player on the field. And so, not to mention that he was, like you could have thrown him in a big league game last summer defensively, and he would have been just fine. So, yeah, I mean, you're not replacing Caden Bodine, but man, what a special player he was. Goodness.
Yeah, he stole a lot of strikes too. Like he gave
Yeah.
he gave Fluky a lot of a nice count a lot of the times,
Yeah, and thinking about that concept about having a catcher and continuity through the year, going down to the Conway Regional, we saw what happened when Florida came down with their second catcher. Right away, East Carolina was putting pressure on him and seeing what he was made out of, and I think that was the difference. And I know East Carolina was playing a lot better baseball, very clean, but I think they took advantage of having a backup catcher, and that continuity was lost for the Florida Gators.
I think it's fair. Yeah, I think if you gave Kevin O'Sullivan truth serum, he would say, and again, this is me speculating, clearly not quoting him, he would probably say that regional draw was awful for them. Like a bunch of teams that really pressure you, because Florida had incredible high-end talent, but they were not a typical Florida team defensively. And even pitching-wise, they just weren't super experienced and skilled. It was either very young guys. They had a very good freshman class, but those guys aren't going to be great typically at holding runners, defending the bunting game. And then, and then Liam Peterson, for as talented as he is, like I wouldn't call him elite at the, like that side of the game. So yeah, that was playing you guys and playing Coastal, not a great draw for Florida.
Yeah, the Pirates definitely made some headway there early in that game with Braden Burris laying one down. Florida had a backup catcher that was 6'6", and definitely you could tell he's a fish out of water from that aspect of things.
And then stole second, got to third, scored really quickly, and the rest is history on that game.
Yeah. So let's shift over to the North Carolina Tar Heels and the job that Coach Forbes has done there. They definitely have very, very high expectations in 2026. And what can you tell us about North Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, North Carolina is highly ranked because they are dynamite on the mound. Their rotation, their listed rotation is Jason DeCaro, Ryan Lynch, who was their star reliever last year as a freshman, and then Folger Boaz, who was their ace. Like Folger Boaz, before he got hurt, he was their Friday night guy as a true freshman 2 years ago. And then Matty Mateus is back in the bullpen, and Walker McDuffie's back there. So North Carolina is just loaded on the mound. They're going to be very, very hard to score on. What's interesting, though, is the position player group. You're not going to recognize it. I mean, basically of the names that you're going to recognize, to me, the only one that has any type of fame is Gavin Gallagher. And if you look at Gallagher, he's been an outrageously good player in the postseason. He's been a good player in the regular season. But, that if you look at the catcher's a transfer from Duke, the first baseman's a transfer from Stony Brook. Then you got a JUCO guy at third base. Then you got North Dakota State shortstop. Then there's center fielders from George Mason. These are all transfers who are good players who put up numbers. But still, like, the lineup is basically, Carter French in right field had 122 at bats last year, but it's basically Gavin Gallagher and 8 new faces. And so that doesn't mean that they're not going to be good, but this is really about the pitching staff for North Carolina.
Yeah, and it's scary to look at, and not just the bullpen, but if you look at the 3 you mentioned there, DeCaro and Lynch and Boaz, I mean, those guys would be number ones on most teams in the country. And we saw what Lynch did late last year. I mean, he was dominant, really. So that is a scary 1-2-3 punch they have there at the starting rotation. I'd laugh about it, but they have a definite team that can compete at the end of the year with that pitching staff.
Agreed. Muted, Bubba.
Yes, he is.
Amateur mistake there. For the last 10 minutes or so that we got with you, Roons, let's take a look at some of the major leagues and also some of the leagues around the country where you may have a team like a Murray State, and it's difficult to forecast those sorts of things. But let's start with the ACC. We mentioned the Tar Heels, obviously Link Jarrett and what he's done down at Florida State the last couple seasons, and then Eric Bakich at Clemson. You have a new coach down at Georgia Tech. What's your take on the ACC this year?
Really good, like really strong. What's the interesting part about the ACC is the bottom of the league is better. BC, Notre Dame, Pitt, those schools. Like Notre Dame, you could put them as a projected field of 64 team. They are really good. And then Boston College will be better. But what's interesting about the ACC is Georgia Tech is the highest ranked team in the league. And, it's a new coach, James Ramsey. He's famous, very well respected. Played for Mike Martin. Danny Hall did an incredible job, another Hall of Famer. But Georgia Tech has not been to a super regional since 2006. It's been 20 years. So, like that's hard. You're just trying to process that. Is that a program thing? Is that they just have run into tough draws in regionals? But they are loaded. They had a really good team back. They have a Player of the Year candidate in Drew Burress. They've pitched better than people think they have. If their pitching reputation is not very good, but if you look closely, it's much better than you think. And then they crushed it in the transfer portal. They got a second baseman, Jared Avincula from Cal, this is a star player. Like I think he'll be first team All ACC. Florida State, Miles Bailey could hit 500 home runs this year. Like he's a monster. Florida State, you have so much respect for Link Jarrett in the program. Virginia's interesting because Chris Pollard goes from Duke to there. I think Wake Forest is sneaky. They're very talented. You just go up and down the league. NC State's really good. That's the thing about the ACC. It's one of those leagues where there's no bottom. Everybody's in it to win it. I'm going to be very curious to see how that plays. The wins are going to be hard to come by in that league because there's so many good clubs.
Hey, I just hope that in the ACC, my wish is that everybody plays the same amount of games. That was a chaotic ending last season. The top 4 teams, one played 30, one played 29, one played 28, one played 27. It was crazy.
Yeah. And that, like the some things in life you can't control, right? The crazy shooting in Tallahassee ends up canceling that series, and that killed Virginia. I mean, now in fairness, Virginia could have gone down there and lost, right? But not getting the opportunity to play Florida State on the road, whatever chance Virginia had to make a run in an at-large bid disappeared right there.
And I think any team coached by Link Jarrett, and I know you got that Notre Dame connection, he took them to the World Series, but any team coached by Link is going to be at the top of the conference every single year. That's just something we've seen with him. He's a winner, and I think that he's obviously he's taking Florida State back to the level where they can get back to the World Series.
Yep.
You mentioned Coach Pollard, who had done such an excellent job at Duke, and him getting what he called his dream job at the University of Virginia. And I definitely expect a lot of success there from Coach Pollard and the Wahoos. But obviously, that vacancy was created by Coach O'Connor going to Starkville. What's your take, and how are the Bulldogs going to be looking this year in year one of Coach O'Connor there in Stark, Vegas?
Yeah, and on that, to put a bow on the ACC, one other team to keep in your guys' back pocket, Louisville. I feel like Louisville's back. Like, they are really talented. Omaha team last year, a lot of key guys back. Mississippi State, you've got Brian O'Connor. This is a fan base similar to yours, right? Like, they don't like college baseball in Starkville. They love college baseball, right? Like, they had 10,000 people at their fall alumni game. And, like, their big leaguers show up for that deal. And, it's just weird because Mississippi State, when we did the D1 baseball rankings, they were a team that we were a little divided on because, or at least some of us, because, you could look at, if you want to take a negative look at Mississippi State, you'd say this: they got a bunch of players from Mississippi State who last season was so choppy, they fired their coach, Chris Lamonis, who's the only head coach in the history of school to win a national title. Like, it was that bad that they fired the only guy that ever won him a national title, right? So you got half of that roster back. And then the other half of the roster is Virginia, who didn't make a regional after being preseason number 2. So, like, I don't know, like, does 2 + 2 = 8? Or does 2 + 2 = 3? Or does 2 +, it's like, that's the hard part that I think we're all trying to figure out. Now, I will tell you that everyone that saw them this fall couldn't stop raving about the talent level, because they did get the top of both those rosters. So, I think we're probably a little rich on them at number 4. But hey, like, when guys go see them in person and have that kind of conviction, you're going to defer to that. And we know Brian O'Connor and his coaching staff, Kevin McMullen went with them. They're gonna have those guys ready to play. I think what's interesting to me about the SEC this year, guys, it's similar to the other leagues. The bottom is much better, and the top doesn't look dominant. Like, there's no 2024 Tennessee team at the top of the SEC. LSU is the team we're all calling the best team, but the truth is that really has a lot more to do with the brand and Jay Johnson than it does the roster. There's some transfers in there that are impressive that are going to have to be key players, and they're very talented. Don't get me wrong, but I think the SEC, what makes it interesting is Missouri's not going to go 3-27 this year. They're much better, and South Carolina's not going 6-24 this year. I bet you they're much better. And then, like, you start ranking these teams, and you end up with, like, Alabama 13th and Ole Miss 14th, or vice versa, and you're like, Ole Miss has Hunter Elliott as their Friday night guy. He's a first-team All-American. And then, Alabama's shortstop is Justin LeBron. Yeah. He could be a top 10 pick, and you're like, that's the 13th and 14th team in the league. So it's a long way of saying, like, nobody knows what's going to happen in that league. Hey, then you got the coaching change at like Tennessee. We all love Josh Elander and think very highly of him, but man, that's a big change. Like, no Tony V, no Frank Anderson, no Quentin Eberhardt, their strength coach. Like, I don't know, like, Tennessee's very talented, but it's hard to say how it's going to shake out.
So, Runes, you would not be surprised if they matched the 13 from last season?
Yeah, I think it's a fair, like, hey, 14's on the table, honestly. Like, wow. With that league, it's because they just crushed the non-conference. But I think if you made me pick, like, if you said, okay, the over-under for bids for the SEC is 13, so basically you're making me pick 12 or 14, I'd pick 12. I think 12 is what's going to happen, because I'm starting to get a little nervous about A&M. A&M's very talented, but they just had another pitcher go down, or a pitcher go down. They lost their hitting coach just about a month ago. Mike Gurley's still only in his second year. I mean, A&M, their season has got some volatility to it right now.
And I was going to ask you real quick about the Florida Gators coaching situation and how it may have impacted recruits, et cetera. I know one personally, Denton Lord, that switched to Mississippi State because of that. I wondered how big of an impact it's had on the offseason for Florida.
I mean, I think they're another team that's got a lot of volatility, because I wouldn't say, I'm not really focused on their recruiting as much. Like, Kevin O'Sullivan's an awesome recruiter, and it's such an attractive place in such a hotbed for baseball. And again, Sully is an elite recruiter. Like, he's as good of a recruiting head coach as we have in our sport. But I think what's interesting about Florida is their roster is very, very talented, and it's older. Like, that is a dangerous, dangerous roster. That's a go to Omaha and win the whole thing roster. But how was their fall, right? Like, it's not just that Sully was out. And we're all, I think everyone in college baseball is excited to have him back. Like, that's tough. You just, when you see stuff like that, you're like, oh man, you worry about the worst. But I'm thrilled that Sully's back. But what kind of fall did they have? I don't know. And they lost their top assistant. Chuck Girolman's now at Tennessee. So I think Florida, Brendan Lawson, who's their best hitter, is a dynamite player. He's a future top 10 pick. Florida is going to be fascinating because it could go 100 different directions.
Final question I have for you, Runes. Obviously, you're a West Coast guy by nature, and at least living out there in Arizona before the Pac-12 dissolved. And I know they're still technically around, but back when they were, rolling and having so much success before, and those teams went to the Big 12 and Big 10 respectively. You covered that very well, and then also leagues such as the Big West. Who are some teams out there on the West Coast that we can keep an eye on that are threats to make significant runs?
Yeah, it's a lot of the usual suspects. Like, if I go from the north to the south, the West Coast teams in their first year in the Big Ten were dominant, right? And I expect that to continue. USC, Oregon, UCLA, Washington, they're not like an Omaha team yet, but that program's really growing under Eddie Smith. So they're viable. In the Big West, Irvine and Santa Barbara are both excellent again, Santa Barbara in particular. And then, Cal Poly's very good again. Fullerton's starting to make a run back here. So the Big West usual suspects. I think in the, both Oregon schools, Oregon State might have the best rotation in the country. They've got, that Dax Whitney kid is back, and 6'5" right-hander, upper 90s, hammer breaking ball. He's dynamite. And Oregon State's got a lot of position players to replace, but they're going to be great. Oregon will be great again. And then in the Big 12, which is kind of a West Coast conference now, TCU is the favorite. West Virginia's really good again. Arizona's got elite pitching. It's just a matter of how quickly their position player group grows up. And then Arizona State, we mentioned the 34 scholarships. I mean, they crush the portal. Arizona State's position player group is elite, and it's old. They are going to be something. And Arizona State's bullpen is dynamite too. Their Achilles heel right now is they don't know who the rotation is, and some of those dynamite starters are going to have to go start. And so you guys know how that goes. Like, now your bullpen's not as good, and are those kids suited for the rotation? But Arizona State is a team that you should keep an eye on because they're very talented. And, again, I think the Big 12 is as deep as it's ever been. The other school I'd give you is Oklahoma State. You remember they eliminated Georgia in that Athens regional last year. They were not very healthy last year. They're healthier than they've been right now, knocking on wood. If Oklahoma State stays healthy, they've got a run in them. That's a very interesting team.
I have one real quick question for Dallas Baptist. We saw that they lost 3 or 4 players in the top of the draft last year, and they still look like they're tooled up to make another run. You think they're capable this year?
I mean, yeah, it's what's tricky about Dallas Baptist is they've been to a super regional, but they just keep getting stuck in regionals. And, like, some people would say, man, I pray for that problem, right? Like, have the 4th longest regional streak in the country is amazing. But yeah, like, I'm never going to bet against Dallas Baptist and Dan Hefner. They've got a great blueprint. They're physical. They rake. They're athletic. They always have power arms on the mound. So they're kind of like Arkansas, but just Conference USA, where it's like, I don't know all the players on Dallas Baptist right now, but I know they're going to be good.
Awesome. I had one quick question, not really college baseball, though. One of my favorite players to watch on the field and managers in MLB is Craig Counsell. And I know that he was a teammate of yours at Notre Dame. I was just curious, was he like a leader back then? And did you probably recognize that he was going to be a future manager at some point?
I mean, I don't want to lie and say I thought he'd be like a 16-year big leaguer and a future manager, but like, Counts was not like, it depends on how you define leader, but like, yeah, he was a great teammate. The thing I'd say about Counts is his baseball instincts were like Rain Man level. Like for the rest of us, when we were freshmen, sophomores, the game felt like it was going 10 trillion miles an hour, and Counts never got sped up. Like the way he saw the game was so slow. It was like a veteran quarterback. And so, and by the time we were juniors, he had gone from a little scrawny role player, like a good player, but like, just not very physical. Our junior and senior year, like he was the best player on the field almost every game. He was awesome. So, I mean, I would just say this, like, we're all so proud of him, like proud of him winning 2 World Series and proud of him for playing in the big leagues for 16 years. And now the manager's become like, him being being with the Cubs has been so cool to follow. And then, of course, our coach was Pat Murphy, who's now the Brewers manager. So I didn't think at this age of my life I'd be such a, checking NL Central box scores every day. But here we are. And so, the Brewers and the Cubs are my squads.
Awesome.
And as we wrap this up, Runes, I apologize, but Justin Butts had chimed in about 5 minutes ago with a question regarding
Sure.
the parity of the game with this transfer portal NIL era. You, of course, have programs like Coastal Carolina, Murray State, East Carolina, Southern Miss, whomever that can make a run. What are your thoughts on the health of the game as it pertains to those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have to be careful jumping to conclusions because it's all changing so rapidly. But I think at the same time, it's been really fun to watch. I think if you really care about college baseball, and all of us on this call do, I love the ACC in baseball. I love the SEC in baseball. Those are my people, right? Like I wake up thinking about college baseball. I go to bed thinking about college baseball. Well, so do the SEC fan bases, right? Like that's my church. And so I'm not going to be mad at them for loving college baseball too much. But when we showed up in Omaha in 2024, and there's 30 leagues nationally, and only 2 are represented, there's 4 ACC teams and 4 SEC teams. If you love our sport, you're like, oh boy, this does not feel very good. Like this feels very uncomfortable. But then we come back next year or last year in 2025, and it's 7 different leagues represented, 2 teams from the SEC, and then 6 teams from other leagues. And you're like, how could that possibly happen in 12 months? So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen this year. And then you watch this Indiana football thing, and you're like, I mean, I don't even know what, like, Indiana wasn't bad in football. They were worse than bad. Like it was gross for like 100 years. And then, Coach Sig comes in there, and next thing you know, they're just, pushing SEC programs around. It's like bonkers. So I can't wait to see how it plays out this year. But I would say like the last 2 Omahas, I mean, I don't even know what to make of it. Those are such extremes that, but count me in, right? Like any like craziness like that, it's so fun when it happens. So I'm here for it.
Yeah, like you said, with Indiana in football, it wasn't like they were nowhere near Ole Miss in their level of success. I mean, Indiana had won something like 5 or 6 games against top 10 teams in their program's history. They won 6 this year.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's the craziest thing in sports I think I've seen in my lifetime.
But Mike, as always, appreciate the time. And if you would, go ahead and plug your social media and how folks can listen to D1 Daily and all the excellent content that you guys put out.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, so it's my Twitter is Mike_Rooney. That's probably the best place to keep track of me. And then and it's on the screen here. And then like me and all the guys at D1Baseball, we're cranking out conference previews left and right. Joe Healy and Mark Etheridge do incredible stuff with SEC Extra, and Bradley Smart doing ACC Extra. He's phenomenal. We call him the whiz kid, smartest person in college baseball. He should be working. Bradley Smart should be working for NASA. He just can't. He's just addicted to college baseball. So. And then me and Berkey have the D1 Daily podcast twice a week, which has been a blast. So, yeah, can't wait. Boys, it'll be here before we know it.
No doubt. Again, appreciate the visit, and we look forward to catching up with you down the road.
All right, you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pirate Nation, that is Mike Rooney. Definitely appreciate his time and spending right at an hour, just shy of an hour with us tonight, talking anything and everything college baseball. But guys, any major, thoughts on the things that Runes had to say tonight?
No, I'm always impressed with his level of knowledge and can just bring it right off of the top of his head. So very impressive. I could probably speak to him all night. You guys know me.
Yeah,
That's
no
the thing.
doubt.
Well, I agree with you on that. And he just spouted out things without looking at anything, like you said, off the top of his head. That he mentioned some things that I came up with and doing some research that took me hours, but he just he didn't have to look at anything. He knew it. Very impressive.
Yeah, Mike, definitely a tremendous student of the game, if you will, and appreciate him being so generous with his time because he certainly doesn't have to do that. But they have a great thing going on and have just grown tremendously there at D1Baseball. Definitely the top source for college baseball coverage, although there are other good ones out there. I definitely think that they knock it out of the park with their coverage. One thing that I would, or not would, but I definitely strongly disagree with is their use of the term mid-major, and that's something
Yeah.
I didn't really want to bring up, but since some of our viewers had chimed in using that term, and I just refused to to ask a question or mention that. I know I just mentioned it, but yeah, that's
Yeah,
something
I have
that's
a lot of
just,
thoughts on that as well. Yeah, in college baseball, any given Friday, there's a lot of teams that can from 60, 70 can beat the number one team in the country based on who they're pitching. I think, mid-major is a bad term, but I think the biggest difference is the amount of pitching arms that you have um, bringing into a regional or super regional is what is the difference between
Well,
a mid major and a big major. And I think that that's going to change at East Carolina this year, Johnny. I think
yeah,
they're going to see a lot more arms, and that's a big deal.
yeah. With the success that our Pirates are having in the pros, I agree with you, Wool. But I was going to ask him that. But I mean, I have so many notes here. I was going to ask him, but at the top of my notes was there were 277 players that went from non-powerfuls. What are we going to call the mid majors, Bubba? What do you want us to call them? Because there is. I mean, I got to call them something. So I'll just stick with non-power four schools. There were
no,
200.
hey, you guys can certainly
No, we got to come up with a new term because I do agree with you about the mid majors. I do. I don't like that term one bit. And we're not, that's not an accurate description, but we do have to come up with like another term. Anyhow, just
I
finish
just
this.
yeah, I mean, if you want to, yeah, whatever, however you want to put it, from teams from the non autonomous leagues,
And
or
here's the thing.
however you want to phrase it. I generally just refer to the team or the conference.
Yeah, well, the Big Ten, they're, I mean, if they're going to, continue to refuse to go to 34 with their scholarships, they're going to stick to 11-7. They're not going to be able to match the other, I'm going to say Power Four conferences. But in any event, my stat, it wasn't really a stat. What I was going to ask him is 277 players left non-Power Four schools to go to Power Four schools in the transfer portal, and 175 of them were pitchers. And that's exactly proven your point, Bubba. Every time a pitcher does well at our level in the offseason, they're stolen by a team that has more money, SEC, ACC, Big 12. And it's really, really tough for the teams like, at our level to keep pitchers. So, we're lucky to have Norby, and
Yeah,
Coastal's lucky to have Fluky.
yeah,
Yeah,
Coastal's deep. And thinking about, Big Ten, yeah, they're not a mid-major in football, but I'm gonna tell you this, in baseball, they are. I
Yeah,
mean, I think about the teams they've sent to Omaha, right? Yeah, they'll have a good team here and there, but consistently,
but
there's
now
no difference between them and the American Conference or the
but now
Sun
there
Belt, for
is,
that
Wool,
matter.
because they stole those teams from the Pac-12 or whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it.
those teams, yeah,
Yeah, they're gonna, like Oregon State. Well, not Oregon State, UCLA, and Oregon will give them credibility to some degree.
yeah, exactly. And I
But
don't know if you guys know this, but Oregon's trying to become a more offensive team. The dimensions of their baseball field have been changed to make it more offensive friendly. So they're trying to change that culture over there.
very interesting. I didn't know that.
Yep.
anyhow.
Kind of some other takeaways. Give credit here to Jared Plummer. He was able to get out to some of the scrimmages over the weekend, and some things that stood out. Ethan Norby pitched very well. Not surprised to hear that. It was awesome hearing, and I referenced this during our conversation with Mike, as far as Brett Antolik and Ryan Towers throwing. That was great to see. There was actually a picture on social media that ECU Baseball put out there of Ryan Towers, the lefty from Loyola Marymount that missed last year with the arm injury. Tommy John, he had the internal brace, as did Jake Hunter. And speaking of Jake Hunter, we'll have him on the show here in the coming days. Him, in addition to one of his former catchers, Ryan McChrystal, before they report to the Twins and then the Cincinnati Reds, respectively. So definitely stay tuned for those conversations. But in addition to Norby and Towers and Antolik, you had Gavin Van Kempen seemingly pitching very well. And so many of those arms that we've heard about had good outings over the weekend. Also, Grady Linehan did some nice things. We've heard about the very talented freshman, and we'll see how much PT he gets early on this season.
Yeah, his name is constantly brought up in all the circles I read. So be interesting to see what he brings to the table.
Looking
And that
forward
was
to it.
Mr. Linehan there, who I was
Yeah.
speaking of. And also, you didn't mention Frank. And I mean, think about the pitching staff. They have guys that can, a lot of starters. That is a lot different than what East Carolina's had here recently. So a lot of arms to go to, a lot of arms that can throw innings and be extended.
And I'll give another shout out here to Mully, because this is the source of this information via Pirate Radio. But he was talking about Alex Boucher, and from what he had seen in the fall and through conversations he had had with those within the program, just the job with a refined approach under new hitting coach Jake Gotro, a much more disciplined approach, hopefully laying off those low and away sliders as we've referenced, and cutting down on that strikeout total and putting the ball in play back up the middle and to the opposite field, because we've seen his power to the opposite field when he puts the bat on the ball, like that grand slam down there at UNC Wilmington last year, and that allowed the Pirates to win that game. And also saw some good things from another speedy center fielder, and Jeff. I keep wanting to say Sabater, and the jury, in my mind, the jury's still out on that name. But
I agree.
Someone in the jungle when he's
called him Sabater, so I'll say Sabater.
Someone in the jungle when he's out there is going to have to say, "Hey Jeff, how do you pronounce your last name?" So we can get it straight, because I've heard it a few different ways.
Because you think back to last preseason, we heard Peltier, we heard Peltier. So I just like, heck with this. I'm gonna get on YouTube and see what I can find. And there was a video of him saying his name, and it sounded like Peltier to me. So,
and we do know, Bubba's confirmed that it's Jack, straight from Jack, that it's Jack Vogeli, not Jack Vogeli.
Yeah. Definitely not trying to call anyone out there, but just heard that pronunciation, so I was like, well, maybe they're right, but I'm pretty sure Jack told me that it was Vogely, and so I reached out and confirmed that, and yes, it is in fact Vogely. He said he was laughing about it, and he said, hey, it's not the first time, won't be the last, that my last name is mispronounced. And I said, I definitely understand with a last name like Rosenbaum, but
so we have Vogely, Hakome, and maybe Saboteur. Until we find out further. But I'm with you. I feel like that's the way it's pronounced. But
that just doesn't sound right, Sabater.
Yeah, it doesn't. No.
No.
And as my good buddy Jason Tindall, that does Blackbeard's Alley, a Pirate football podcast with me, I'll leave it at that. It's as far as that last name is concerned. But guys, any other Any other nuggets that you had to add before we get out of here?
Well, I'd like to add one. I would say this is the best performance by a podcast host doing a show from a vehicle that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Hey, I
Well
do what I
done.
can do. I do what I can do.
And you did it very well. Nobody would have really known if we didn't see your the dome light in the background.
Hey, yeah. Hey, Runes.
Hey, when you get to call Rooney, Mike Rooney, Runes, you know you've got it. You're in the big leagues there, Johnny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt. No doubt, Will. I called him that one time and it didn't feel right. I don't think I've
Yeah,
earned that privilege.
it just doesn't feel right for me either.
No.
I don't even, yeah.
On one hand, I get it, and that's one of those things that I think, we've talked to him so much now, and hey, you saw in his name bar on the screen, that's what he typed. So he's definitely cool with it, but I understand since we don't really know him on a personal level.
Yeah,
But
and he's got good friends like Craig Counsell. He calls Counsell Counts, and then obviously Pat Murphy. And the thing is I remember when a couple weeks back, Bubba said, is Pat Murphy still with the Brewers? It kind of stunned me for a minute. I'm thinking, so a two-time back-to-back manager of the year is no longer with the Brewers? I had to take a step back and say, did he get fired for some reason or did he quit?
no,
But anyway, yeah, so he's got friends in high places as well.
as Bobby Knight would say, I was illuminating my relative lack of knowledge of Major League Baseball in recent years. I'll watch some games. I'll go to some games to watch Pirates play, like traveling down to watch the Braves take on the Cardinals and seeing Burley. But as far as knowing rosters like I used to, no shot.
Nope, me neither, Bubba.
I'll look at a
John Wayne
roster
for
and
that.
there's several teams I may not even recognize a single player on the roster. That's how out of touch I've been with MLB in recent years. But I've kind of gotten back into it.
For me in the recent years,
Yeah.
it's not the same. I don't keep up with it as much. I do keep up with the Pirates, but there was a time in my life, and I proved it to my wife. She had a book that one of her friends had that had a bunch of baseball cards in it, and I said, just tell me a player's name on there, and I'll tell you what college he played for, what year he came into Major League Baseball, etc. And I could do that at one time in my life, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm getting too old for that now, Johnny.
Yeah, but you and I, we both used to play Stratomatic baseball back in the day. And back
Yeah.
then, I knew every player, even players that never got into games hardly. I knew every player on every team because,
Oh, yeah.
you had to. And now with Major League Baseball, Bubba, the only reason we know any players on any Major League team that's not the Atlanta Braves is because we're following Gavin and Trey.
Exactly.
Yeah, and others. And,
we learned the Blue Jays lineup last year because of
we
Trey
sure did, and every team that they played as well. And then, but as far as following Pirates, I don't even do that because I got Wool. And Wool, all I have to do is say what's going on, and he tells us, every Pirate what they're doing, and it makes life a lot easier. Gives me extra time to do other things. I appreciate that, Wool.
Yeah, I do keep up with him, and I have no problem doing that. Like you said, when you keep up with certain things, you start learning about other teams, etc. So that's the cool part about now that East Carolina has so many players in the majors. And that wasn't the way in the past. That shows you what the Cliff has done with the program. The amount of success and talent that's being brought to East Carolina is unparalleled at this point.
No doubt.
Yeah, you guys talk about recognizing a lot of those old names and taking a trip down memory lane, so to speak, especially when you come across some old baseball cards or something. And, over the last few days with the snow days, Stacy and I were doing some cleaning out and came across a big box of baseball cards, most of which I don't care anything about, but I came across a set. I don't know if it was the 95 team that won the World Series or which, but it was a complete set, and it may have actually been one of those earlier 90 teams. But at any rate, it had.
You talking about the Braves?
Yeah, it had Jeff Blauser, had Mark Lemke, all those names.
Pendleton, Terry
Pendleton,
Javier behind the plate.
Yeah. So I really think it was If it wasn't 91 or 92, it was shortly thereafter. But it was a lot of
Well,
those
yeah, well,
household names
91.
that you would
So
expect to see.
yeah, 91. So think about when Maddox came to the Braves. Maddox had actually won the Cy Young for a losing Chicago Cubs team. Awesome pitcher. They knew what they were getting, but I'm today years old to find out that they were trying to get either Greg Maddox or Barry Bonds down to Atlanta. But then they get Maddox, and the rest is history. But think about all those guys that stuck together for so long: Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz, Chipper Jones, Andrew
Avery.
Jones. I mean, what a and they only won one World Series. Yeah, they went up 2-0
Yeah.
in the Yankees. But anyway, I don't want to get off on a tangent because I can speak baseball all day long. So I know
Yeah.
it's getting late. So
No, no, you're good. Shoot, what the Braves won the division, the NL East, or I guess NL West initially, which never made any sense to me. That was
Yep.
crazy. I guess just had to balance out the number of teams, but you had the Braves in the NL West. But the Braves
yeah,
won
and
the.
the NL West. The one year the year I went into the Coast Guard, I went to boot camp, 1993. They were down 8 games towards the end of the year, and when I got out of boot camp and found out they had overtaken the San Francisco Giants on the last day to win the pennant, and back there winning the pennant was the big deal because they didn't have a lot of teams in the playoffs. But yeah, Braves at that time frame were the team,
Well,
and
you said 92 is the what cards do you have, Bubba?
I'm honestly not sure which team it was, and to be honest, I think it was a complete set, but I had also thrown some other Braves cards from other eras in there.
Okay.
So but you had Lemke, you had Blauser,
What about
you
Dion? Was
had
Dion in
Maddox.
there?
Yeah, I don't think Dion was in there, but I think there may have been a Ron Gant in there,
Oh
like
yeah.
Will mentioned, Terry Pendleton.
David
uh,
Justice, maybe. I think.
Yeah, I think of David Justice, but yeah, a lot of those household names.
yeah, Justice was the one who caught the last pitch from the year they won the World Series. They the pop up to outfield. I think Glavine
Otis
pitched that
Nixon,
game. One hitter.
Yeah. Otis Nixon.
Oh, Otis or
Sid
Otis Nixon.
Bream.
I've heard it called both ways.
Really? I've never heard Otis Nixon.
I've heard Otis, but a lot of people say no, it's Otis. But
Yeah,
I remember he had like 6 steals in one game. I remember that.
yeah. And he looked very old for his age, but he was. I mean,
Like
that guy
most
was.
players, yeah.
Yeah, he was fun to watch. He was
Yep.
very fun to watch, for sure.
But yeah, I was like you, Wool, when we saw that video earlier this afternoon. As far as Barry Bonds, I did not realize that the Braves were considering him so strongly prior to getting Greg
Yeah.
Maddox, and I thought it was hilarious when they asked Leo Mazzoni. He said, "Are you serious? I'm the pitching coach. What do you think I'm going to say?"
Yeah. And he went as far as to say that Maddox was probably the greatest free agent signing in the history of baseball. And I'm like, hold on, let me think about that. Was Babe Ruth ever a free agent or he's just straight traded, right? So I don't know.
Yeah,
But that's
Wow.
yeah, but that was coming from Mazzoni. So, like him being a pitching coach, he's gonna, you know, go that
yeah.
route.
But yeah, excellent college baseball talk tonight. Rounded out here by a little trip down memory lane as it pertains to our love for the Atlanta Braves. Lot of Braves fans within Pirate Nation, so I knew they wouldn't mind.
Definitely. Hey, before we stop Braves talk, I had this conversation today with a fellow Braves fan. He said to me, I never thought about this. He said, can you imagine in the steroid era, could you imagine if Hank Aaron had access to steroids back in his days, what he would have done? And it was like, Hank by himself was crazy. It was ridiculous. But could you imagine if he was like somehow was able to? Is
Yeah.
this an inappropriate conversation?
No, he just made things look easy at the
He
plate.
did, but his point was he was against any player that was on steroids to be admitted into the Hall of Fame. And I said I wasn't sure I wanted to go there. And he said, well, just think of like Hank Aaron, how well he did. We know he was clean. And could you imagine if he was on steroids, what he would have done? You don't know. I mean, maybe I don't know. It was interesting, though.
Ken Griffey Jr., right?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's crazy to think about
So
as well.
the thing about Ken is that's a perfect point on what steroids does for players. Not only does it get them stronger, but it heals people quicker. So baseball is a 162 game season. It's a churn on the body, and Ken broke down. Ken Griffey Jr. broke down, and if if he'd been doing steroids, etc., that would have helped him heal and get back out on and play games and hit, etc. Kind of like a player we know that did that. But yeah, that's the big factor when it comes to steroids. It's a healing product, and it gets you back out and playing very quickly for a long grind of a season.
And I actually somehow came across a video in the last day or two. It was a 104-mile-an-hour fastball. This was, I guess, Comerica Park in Detroit. And it was hit a long, long way by Ken Griffey Jr. when he was with the Reds. I think it may have been 03 or 04, but it was unreal.
With that swing, if he ever got a hold of one, Lord have mercy. But yeah, I know the exact play that you're talking about, and I've seen that, and I don't even know if that ball stopped flying yet.
But yeah, before we get out of here, let's go ahead and promote some of our upcoming content. As I mentioned, we'll have conversations with former East Carolina catcher and currently in the Cincinnati Reds organization. We'll see where he starts this year. Last year, he made the quick rise to high A ball up in Dayton, Ohio, and that is Ryan McChrystal. And then, of course, former East Carolina pitcher Jake Hunter, who pitched up in Frederick in the MLB Draft League, and then right at the tail end of the season was signed by the Minnesota Twins. I'm very excited for Jake to get that opportunity in affiliated ball. And speaking of independent ball, though, and trying to earn your way back into affiliated ball, and that is the Atlantic League of Professional Baseball. Mark Minikazi is once again managing there this time. He is back. Yep, he is back in Maryland, in Hagerstown. Yeah, I started to say the Hagerstown Suns, but the Hagerstown Boxcars. And definitely appreciate Kaz and his support of the show with pgxgloves.com. Go to pgxgloves.com and check out their excellent selection of batting gloves, and also they have football gloves if your child, grandson, a close family friend that you maybe need to purchase a birthday present for. You can definitely find it there. And there you see the Miami Vice gloves, the Eye of the Tiger gloves, which are very cool, the goat gloves, and then also the mad or angry clown face gloves there that I know JR, you were, I think, a fan of, that you referenced. If you were still playing competitive softball, I think you may go with those, right?
Hey, I still have a pair of PGX gloves. None of the ones that are shown. He's next level now. I like all of them. The crazy clown though, that's with the red tipped fingers, which I guess is like blood soaked fingers.
Yes, that is quite the glove right there.
But again, pgxgloves.com, use promo code Jungle Tales in all caps with no spaces. So Jungle Tales in all caps, no spaces, to get 25% off your entire order at checkout. So I really appreciate Mark McCausey and his support of Jungle Tales. But be sure to follow us on social media at Jungle Tales Pod on X and Instagram. You can find us by simply searching Jungle Tales, a Pirate Baseball podcast, on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. But that will do it for episode 69. Again, appreciate Mike Rooney of D1Baseball and his excellent coverage, and just talking about a smorgasbord of topics over about 50 or 55 minutes this evening. But we'll talk to you soon here on Jungle Tales. And as always, go Pirates.